One of the most asked questions I get is around how much power does a specific gun produce, usually followed by, can I use it to shoot pests? Well, today I'm going to be looking at the power produced by airguns and discussing how much power is enough and how much is maybe too much in the interests of safety. So, no target work on this one, or gun reviewing specifically. This is about the hard facts and figures around power. I won't be looking into the specific law around airguns because, sadly, when I asked the firearms officer, he refused to get involved. Hello and welcome to AAR On Air. Before I even start this programme, there are a few things to bear in mind. Someone out there will have their own opinion and story to justify shooting a rabbit at 100 yards with a CO2 pistol, and I'm sure these comments will get a reaction from the viewers, and I welcome those reactions. However, the information and facts today are based on my years of shooting and pest control, together with facts and figures from actual chronograph work across dozens of different guns, from CO2 pistols to 100 foot-pound FAC 303 air rifles. So, this is my 1 to 100, so to speak. The guns used in these tests, by the way, are all owned and used by myself. So the results come from long-term experiences. This particular test has been a very time-consuming project and has produced pages and pages of facts and figures. It is broken down into two parts initially, pistols and rifles. But then each category is split into two again, CO2 pistols and PCP pistols. Then rifles are split into standard UK sub 12 foot-pound rifles and the higher power FAC rifles. First up then, a favourite of mine, the CO2 pistol. These are great. I own several and they are addictively collectible, especially the replica type, and very affordable really. But this programme is specifically about power and not desirability. So, how much power can you typically expect from one of these guns? Well, a blowback version will, as a rough rule of thumb, often produce less power than a non-blowback, because some of that power is used to produce the blowback effect. But this isn't necessarily always the case. Barrel length will also play a part in the power output. This Crosman Sheridan is first up with a power output of 1.84 foot-pounds at the barrel in pellet form, as opposed to the Umrex SA10, also pellet, producing 2.23 foot-pounds at the barrel. But measure the power at 20 metres and that falls to 1.4 foot-pounds for the Sheridan and 1.7 foot-pounds for the SA10. Okay, so what does that mean? Well, it can first of all mean a drop in the point of impact by as much as 5.5 inches or 13 centimetres. So accuracy has gone straight out of the window potentially. So what about vermin control? Scouting the internet looking for the amount of power required to effectively dispatch various forms of pests, the findings are worryingly varied. For example, I have seen figures as low as 3 foot-pounds to dispatch a pigeon. I can only assume they were shooting paper ones, because I've seen pigeons hit with lower-end FAC air rifles get up and fly away. Of course, it's also about where you hit them. So, that accuracy comes into play again, making a CO2 pistol completely unusable on both counts, even assuming 3 foot-pounds was enough, which it isn't. The chances of you getting a headshot with a pistol at 20 metres is very, very slim, and I would say impossible at, say, 40 metres, at which distance the pistol would only produce somewhere around 1 foot-pound and have a drop at point of impact of nearly 14 inches, or 35 centimetres. At this point, it's worth bringing in a bit of an accuracy guide. So get the beer out, guys. Well, only for the beer bottle tops, you understand. Because these are about the right size for headshots of most small quarry. Then the requirement is to hit these consistently at the likely distance you'll be hunting. Not occasionally or 5 out of 10 times, but consistently. At this point, using a pistol, you will likely realise that it is virtually impossible to do it. Certainly with any of these pistols at any realistic hunting distances. When you've mastered the beer bottle top challenge, which is really only doable with rifles, it would normally be a good idea to get your range finding skills up to date so you can adjust for slightly different distances. Certainly when out in the field. Master that and we're halfway to getting the kind of results you want when out hunting. That said, back to the power figures. So, CO2 pistols are great as they are, but are not suitable for taking out any quarry, period. PCP pistols then. For this, I tested the SMK Victory PP700W, which is a really accurate gun and capable of getting close to the 6 foot-pound maximum allowed for pistols in the UK. My combination was showing 5.4 foot-pounds with the lighter JSB pellets at the barrel and down to 4.2 foot-pounds at around 20 metres. Now the accuracy is pretty good with this gun and scope combination, but I wouldn't say it has the required power for a pigeon at all. Possible close-up rats, but nothing much more. So what about this? The Brocock Super 6. Again, another PC pistol, but in .22 calibre with 4.15 foot-pounds at the barrel and just under 3.5 foot-pounds at 20 metres. Again, accurate to this sort of range and just about enough power for small vermin. Pigeons? Well, I wouldn't recommend it because I'm still not convinced on this claimed 3 foot-pounds being enough to dispatch a woody. Out of the pistols then, I would only recommend the more powerful or full power ones as they are classed in the UK. And then for close quarter rat work only. Once you've got that accuracy nailed down, that is, which with a pistol is not at all easy, whatever power output. Penetration then. Well, this was done on 2 different target materials and I will look at this later, which should prove you can still hurt someone or something with these guns, but not clearly dispatch them necessarily. Rifles then. Let's open this up with a quick look at a non-hunting rifle, just to give you the full picture. The Umarex Underlever CO2. Here, of course, temperature plays a part, and on the cold January day I tested this, it produced 5.65 foot-pounds at the barrel. It has, not surprisingly, produced higher figures than this in better and warmer conditions. Again, I love this rifle, but not for its power output. At 20 metres it drops to about 4.4 foot-pounds and at 40 metres as low as 3.4 foot-pounds. Because this is open sights, and even though it's pretty accurate, I could not guarantee the bottle top hit at any of the longer distances, and I maintain it doesn't really have enough power either. So pigeon work is out of the question, and I wouldn't want to take this around any rat-infested barns. Not really. The Crosman 2250 rat catcher would be a better option and capable of putting out some higher power figures. And it's pretty much purpose built for the job, as the name implies. Let's get down to some more realistic pest control guns and look at the power outputs. Rifles are, as we've already established, really the only way to go. Firstly, I will look at the sub 12 foot-pound versions, as this is the main power output sold in the UK due to our tighter laws. Rightly or wrongly, but that's another matter. Let's look at three different calibers: 177, 22 and the less common .20. I'm going to use the FX Wildcat for the 177 example, which when using the JSB 8.44 grain pellets is showing 11.58 foot-pounds at the muzzle, which equates to just under 7 foot-pounds at 40 metres. The rifle is easily accurate enough for the beer bottle top test and still carries a healthy power delivery out at usable target distances. The flatter trajectory of the 177 means less drop and hence more accuracy, but it will still drop by 15 centimetres or about 6 inches from the barrel if unadjusted for by the scope. But should you use 177 for hunting? Some would say you need 22 for hunting because it carries more power. Well, my Daystate Pulsar in 22 calibre gave 11.54 foot-pounds at the muzzle and still holds about 72% of that power at 40 metres, giving just over 8.25 foot-pounds, so slightly more hitting power than the 177, but the flight trajectory is not as flat and will require a little more work with the rangefinders to ensure accuracy, potentially dropping by 26 centimetres or just over 10 inches at 40 metres and 43 centimetres at 50 metres, showing a higher rate of drop. Of course, this drop is compensated for by the scope and causes a rather large arc or curve, but needs more compensation by the shooter. Let's look at the middle ground, the lesser used .20 calibre. In this case, it's a Huntsman rifle, a personal favourite of mine, and at the muzzle it's hitting 11.23 foot-pounds and at 40 metres still retains 72% of its energy, same as the .22, with just over 8 foot-pounds of power left, but with a slightly flatter trajectory than the .22, not quite as flat as the 177 though, dropping by 23 centimetres at 40 metres. So why don't more people use the .20? Good question, and I can't answer that other than to say there are fewer types of pellets available than the other calibers. But to me, the hunting fancy type plastic pointed pellets don't work as well as good quality standard Dome Diablo pellets. Anyway, don't believe me? Check out my previous pellet tests or run the tests yourself. So what does 8 foot-pounds of power look like at point of impact? To test this out, I used a whole bunch of Airgun magazines because we don't have telephone directories anymore, and I needed a thick substance that I could gauge how far each pellet had penetrated. I will count the number of pages it has gone through. Bear in mind these pages are quite tightly packed. I'll walk through the results in full a little later. I'll also test this with the bigger guns later too. Next up, I used a 3/4 inch piece of plywood, which is alleged to be a good example of a human being. It is said if it goes through this, it has the power to kill a person. A scary thought, but in the interest of science. So, any of the above I would happily say are capable of the accuracy required and the hitting power required to take out most small quarry at up to about 40 metres. Please don't claim this level of power is usable for such as foxes, etc., because I would strongly disagree. FAC or Firearms Certificate. Now let's hit the bigger stuff, the FAC rifles. Again, I'm going to use 3 different calibers, 177, .22 and the much bigger .30. Or as Daystate call it, the .303. I realise not everyone has an FAC licence and not everyone needs one. But not everyone drives a Ferrari either, but we still watch the motoring programmes out of interest. The reason we are looking at them is to complete the package, but also perhaps explain why you need a licence for one of these and the damage they can cause. First up then, another real favourite of mine and one that is pellet on pellet accurate. The BSA R10 Mark II. When I first got this, I rang BSA to thank them for such a superbly accurate rifle. At the muzzle, this kicks out 19.81 foot-pounds, which is not a high amount, but makes a real difference to the speed the pellet travels. And above all, it flattens the flight trajectory a lot. With a drop at 40 metres of only 11 centimetres or about 4 inches, it carries 74% of its power out to 40 metres, which equates to just over 11 foot-pounds. These figures are using a heavier weight pellet at 10.34 grain. You can use a greater number and more varied weighted pellets with a higher power rifle, but you will still settle on a best match, so to speak. Too light and you start to go supersonic and lose stability of the pellet in flight. And this is a strange experience. Too heavy and you gain the hard-hitting power, but you lose some of that wonderful flatter trajectory. This rifle is both accurate enough and powerful enough to dispatch most small pests, including the seemingly bulletproof wood pigeon, and it can be stretched out to longer distances, having the same retained energy of a sub 12 foot-pound rifle at 70 metres. Not quite as long a distance as the next one though. This is the Date State Huntsman Regal and is my personal choice for most of my hunting. At the muzzle, it reads 38.3 foot-pounds with heavier 18 grain JSB 22 pellets and retains 64% of its power at 40 metres, which is 24.4 foot-pounds, more than twice that of the UK limited guns. Enough for most quarry, and even at 70 metres it still carries 18.63 foot-pounds of energy. The reason I stated 70 metres is because this has clearly dispatched wood pigeons at this distance, no problem. The extra power gives a 2.2 the 177-like flatter trajectory, helping with accuracy. The drop at 40 metres is 9 centimetres or just under 4 inches, and at 70 metres is 34 centimetres or about 13 inches. Mate it with the MTC Viper Pro scope and a rangefinder, and targeting your way through this drop becomes a piece of cake. Finally, we have the bazooka, as Mrs. AAR calls it, the Daystate Wolverine 303. This fires up to 50 grain pellets at a muzzle energy of 95 plus foot-pounds, and not only has a real kick to it, but one heck of a bang, even with a silencer or moderator fitted. The pellet sounds like it's hit the target before it's left the barrel. It travels that fast and hard and retains high percentages of energy even out to quite long distances. 66% at 40 metres, 51% at 70 metres and 39% at 100 metres, which equates to 63 foot-pounds at 40 metres, 48 foot-pounds at 70 metres and still carries 38 foot-pounds at 100 metres. This is pretty much capable of taking most things out if required. The biggest issue is it goes right through and into whatever is behind the quarry. This is basically treated as a rimfire by the firearms officer, and I fully understand why. Let's take a look now at the hitting power of these rifles. Let's go back to our physical test and see what damage these guns can inflict on our test materials. start with the magazines. I'll open these up and look at all the different guns we've shot today. Firstly, I can see the CO2 results from the front before even opening this up. It is still half outside the magazines. So I'll open them up and put the depth figures on the screen for you. So the results of the paper test. Well, the CO2 pistol actually went through 50 pages. The PCP pistol went through 105 pages. The CO2 rifle only managed 76 pages, which is probably due to the fact that it was cold and the power output wasn't that good. The sub 12 foot-pound rifle in .20 managed 110 pages, which is exactly the same as the 177 sub 12 foot-pound. The .22 sub 12 foot-pound managed a little more of 113 pages. The BSA FAC 177 managed 145 pages. The 40 foot-pound day state in 22 managed 194 pages, and the 303 Wolverine at just under 100 foot-pound managed 230 pages. Now bear in mind that isn't page number, that's actual numbers of pages it's gone through. The pellets were pretty much destroyed by the time they got there. They weren't just deformed, they were disintegrated. Now that tells me that if a 303 can go all the way through 3/4 inch rock hard ply and only manage 230 pages of a magazine, I know what I want my bulletproof vest making out of. But it does go to show how strong paper is, which you probably already knew. But nonetheless, if we are hitting 230 pages with a 303, and yet we can still hit nearly half of that with a sub 12 foot-pound rifle, these are not toys. They can do some serious damage. Quite a good test. Not as far as I thought to go through, but it just shows you how hard paper is and the gaps between it. Let's look at the wood. The CO2 pistol did leave an impression in the wood. Only just noticeable, but it is there. The CO2 rifle left a larger indent, but still didn't fully penetrate enough to leave the pellet in the wood. The PCP pistol did, however, leave the pellet stuck in the wood. In fact, one of the shots is fully jammed in. Let's turn this over now and take a look at the PCP rifles. Sub 12 foot-pound. The 22 hit into the wood and totally deformed. The 177, however, went in much deeper and a narrower hole, probably due to its needle-like size, and I suppose that was to be expected. Now we can start and see the difference an FAC rifle makes. Greater depth. The 19 foot-pound 177 BSA is well sunk into the wood and not really visible at all. The .22 40 foot-pound day state likewise is fully embedded in the wood. Then we fired the 303 and it became very evident why a license is required if the 3/4 plywood principle is indeed correct. Clean through the wood and out into the catch box behind. Still carrying a lot of its energy. Just to prove it wasn't a one-off, I did it again. Cleanly through. Lastly, I stole a bone off the dog. A very thick bone. And I fired the day state 303 at it to emphasise how dangerous nearly 100 foot-pounds is and why a licence is required and why you need to jump through hoops in the UK to get one. No Second Amendment here, guys, and full background checks required. No bad thing in my mind. Some would say, why didn't you fire a sub 12 foot-pound rifle at it? Well, I fired the 40 foot-pound 2.2 at it, and it barely left a mark, as you can see. So it would be pointless shooting a sub 12 foot-pounds at this. Well, I think that's pretty conclusive. I can't imagine there are any doubting Thomases left out there by now, and I think it's pretty clear why these things require an FAC licence. And as I've already said, I for one am glad there are restrictions around ownership. If you have a genuine need and a need to shoot over large permissions, then I can see a reason for having one. But for local and back garden pest control, sub 12 foot-pounds will do the job if you practice your accuracy, that is. Just to add emphasis on the figures that we've already been talking about, here are some graphs. First of all, we have a comparison of a 177 sub 12 foot-pounds versus a .22 sub 12 foot-pounds. The top line is the .22, with the bottom line is the 177. As you can see, from the shooting point on the left to the point of impact on the right, the arc in between is considerable, and that would need adjusting via your scope and your rangefinder. The next picture shows again sub 12 foot-pounds, the 177 versus the 2.2, but with the blue line in the middle is the .20. So you can see that the .20 does flatten that line somewhat. It's still more of an arc than the bottom line, which is a 177, but not quite as bad as the .22, but at point of impact is carrying virtually the same power. The next graph is to show you how close a .22 FAC rifle is to the flatter trajectory of a .177 sub 12 foot-pounds. The top line in this instance is the 177 sub 12 foot-pounds, showing that the bottom line, the 40 foot-pound .22, gives a flatter trajectory even than a 177 due to that power. Just to compare 2.2 with 2.2, we have a sub 12 foot-pound versus the 40 foot-pound. The top line is naturally the sub 12 foot-pound, much higher arc than the flatter trajectory of the FAC 40 foot-pound .22. Finally, just to prove the point that pistols are not accurate enough at all for any form of hunting, irrespective of the fact they don't have sufficient power, the top line on this one is a CO2 pistol. The bottom line on this is just the standard 177 sub 12 foot-pound rifle. As you can see, pistols not suitable by a rifle. So, conclusion. Well, this test wasn't just about making bigger and bigger holes. It was to find out what power airguns are capable of and which are suitable for dispatching smaller pests. I would strongly suggest that if you're serious about keeping any pests down, first of all, you buy a rifle rather than a pistol. No matter what it says on some of the CO2 pistol boxes, they are not suitable for pest control. Then, when you've got your rifle, you practice with the beer bottle top challenge, and only then shoot any pests and make sure you only shoot out to realistic distances. For most people with a sub 12 foot-pound gun, that is pretty much a maximum of about 40 yards or 40 metres. I've heard a lot of people call the UK air rifles toys. Looking at the damage they are capable of inflicting, I would never call these toys and always treat them with respect and caution. A wood pigeon is one of the toughest things I've known. I swear, sometimes they're armour plated. But sub 12 foot-pound rifles will drop them like flies if used correctly. I realise not everyone has a chronograph to be able to measure the power their guns produces at distances, but if you download Chairgun from Hawk, it will give you a lot of information if you simply input the initial figure of your gun, always assuming it is producing the power it is intended to. If you want to see any more of the guns used in this test, just let me know in the link below. Some have already been reviewed and they can be found on the AAR On Air channel. Hopefully you've found this informative. Thanks for watching, and above all, safe shooting.